In the digital submission guide, which accompanies all modules affected by the move to online submission, there's a requirement to submit a viability section. And it said that this piece of work should make clear how you've researched and/or tested the viability of the work submitted. It should detail costings, communications with venues where appropriate, and any other logistical considerations that allow you to realise your plans in a different environment to the one we currently find ourselves in. So I'm just going to speak a little bit more about this section, as it's not something you've been asked to do before, and it's going to be essential for your successful completion of modules. The reason you're asked for this work is so that we can mark you fairly. We want to ensure you're not at any disadvantage having had the final weeks of your work quite radically affected. And we also want to appropriately recognise the work you've done in existing planning and thought from here on about the realisation of your projects. A viability section permits us to engage with the work you would have undertaken. It's important to stress, though, that this isn't a place to introduce work or outcomes that are not feasible in the time remaining, or you cannot evidence would have been achievable with available resources and skills. To provide an example, if you were to say that your final submission would have been a beautifully bound Coptic stitched book, we must see where or how you would have printed this work, what paper you would have chosen, where you would have sourced that paper from, and you'd also need to evidence your own ability to bind a book in this way if you were not outsourcing it. Likewise, if you suggest that your final presentation would have been a projection onto the side of a building, we'd want to witness tests, the availability of the appropriate projector, and evidence of permission from the land and building owner for such a proposal. For many of you, the viability section will focus on the realisation of the work as a specific outcome, and thus it will feature details on costs, materials, sizes, suppliers, your own skills, and so on. For some of you, you might also need to include details on planned shoots that you were unable to complete. Again, to reiterate here, you must demonstrate that these were viable, with lighting tests you produced earlier in the module, communications with subjects or scouting images of locations, as well as some reference images perhaps. In independent practice realization, you'll need to think about the viability not only of the body of work, but its installation in an exhibition space, as this is a part of the original assignment brief. Much of what will be in your viability document will also be present in other areas of your research development book, or mirrored also in your digital body of work, like in the exhibition document, but this is not a problem. I appreciate there might be questions arising from this part of the submission, but ask that if possible you direct them to module leaders in arranged tutorials or in office hours, as these questions tend to be sort of best responded to face to face. So to summarise, it's really important that your viability section is clearly presented, rigorous in its setting out of your planned outcomes, and ultimately demonstrates your ability to realise your work in a specific manner. We do not expect anyone to leave the house to produce these documents. If any tests haven't currently been carried out, then they should not be outside of the house. You'll need to do your best to research and demonstrate the viability of something without leaving home.